About the year 2000, when I was about 5 years into my ministry, I read a book by Peter Wagner called Discovering Your Spiritual Gifts. And Peter Wagner loved Billy Graham. He was smitten with Billy Graham. He wanted to be the next Billy Graham. He loved the fact that Billy Graham could go into a stadium filled with 20,000 people, give a rousing speech, give a little bit of a sermon, and at the end he would do an altar call, and just hundreds of people would come forward and accept Christ. He says, that's what I'm going to do. But America doesn't really need another Billy Graham, so I will be the Billy Graham of Bolivia. So I wore my Guatemalan stole in honor of Peter Wagner. So he goes down to Bolivia and he starts a church, and every week he spends the entire week polishing his sermon, and he delivers it, and he gets ready for the altar call, and he delivers it with passion and purpose and hope and prayer, and nobody comes forward. So he does it again the next week. He works on his sermon. What do I need to do differently this week? And he delivers the altar call at the end, and he's just praying that the Lord will save these people. Nobody moves. He does this for 2 months. Thick man, Peter Wagner. And then he says, well, maybe I'm not supposed to evangelize in a group. Maybe I'm supposed to do it one-on-one. So he starts getting on buses. And when he gets on the buses, he sits down and he starts telling them about Jesus and about the glory of Jesus and how do they want to come to the Lord. And they're getting annoyed. They're getting so annoyed that sometimes they change seats just so that they can get away from him. And then he realized, it doesn't matter what I say. I don't have the spiritual gift of evangelism that Billy Graham has. And when I read that and I read the book, it was just like a light bulb went off for me. Because if you're like the church that I was in, and probably this church too, you say, okay, well, we got a spot open in ops, and we got a spot open in mission, and David's got a pulse. He's a bright guy. We'll put him on ops. Cindy, yeah, she's half awake most of the time. Let's put her on, outreach board. And then they're not suited for that. David, you probably are. And I thought, what if we decide to go and do things based upon our spiritual gifts? So I did a 6-week study with the church, and the church loved it. They were so excited. They transformed all the way they did ministry. And this church is a gifted church. And when I saw Ephesians 4, and I thought, I am going to talk about spiritual gifts because I want to share with you what we can do with our spiritual gifts. And I had written down the text, and I had omitted the one verse that dealt with spiritual gifts. And I thought, what in the world is up with this? I actually do want to share spiritual gifts sometime down the road. We're going to do some work on spiritual gifts because this is a gifted church. But I thought, why did I leave the one verse out that talks about some are called to be pastors, some are called to be apostles, some are called to be evangelists, some are called to be teachers? Why did I leave it out? So I had to turn to, probably the most definitive and authoritative spiritual programming that I could think about in America today, which is, of course, as you know, the NFL. Men are very religious on Sunday morning. They religiously turn on their TV and they follow their sport. Their team, and I was a Seahawks fan, which meant that I was a glutton for punishment for many, 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 many years. But then Pete Carroll came, and if you know Pete Carroll from USC or from the Seahawks, he is a fantastic defensive coach. His teams were defensively sound. And there was one game during our Super Bowl winning year when no one, even Bobby Wagner, couldn't make a tackle. And you could just see Pete Carroll just burning, and Pete Carroll's a positive guy. And the whole next week, he just went back to fundamentals. All they worked on was tackling and fundamentals. And the next week, they tackled great and they got back on track. So I thought, what if God had me take out this one verse, because we're supposed to get back to fundamentals. So what does that mean for us? And then in the back of my mind I hear, watch the Jules video, Hands. And now you need to understand that I grew up in the music video generation. MTV was a thing. VH1 was a thing. My friends all watched music videos every time they could. My wife, Mary Cyphers, raise your hand. This is my wife, Mary Cyphers. I know you watch music videos all the time with your sisters. I didn't like music videos. They did nothing for me. So it's like, why am I being asked to watch a video? I know it's not coming from me. So it's like, all right. So I load it on my computer and I watch it, and it's a beautiful song. And it's got lovely lyrics. And I watch the video and I think, meh. And okay, I got to get back to my sermon now. And then I hear in the back of my head, watch it again. I don't want to watch it again. I didn't want to watch it the first time. But here's what I know is, like, if I don't want to do something and I'm getting that in the back of my head, that means it's coming from higher up the food chain. And there's two things when you get that message that comes from higher up in the food chain. One, it's always right. You need to listen to it. And two, more than likely, it's going to annoy you. It had successfully done the second for sure. So as I was about to cue it up again, I saw underneath there's another video to the same song with the same lyrics, but it was by You Kindness. And I thought, well, maybe I'm supposed to watch that. And so I did, and I thought, oh my God, this is it. So you are going to be subjected to about 2.5 minutes of the first half of You Kindness. Jacob? I saw that, and I realized there's something here. We are a gifted church. But sometimes in our gifts, we are so sure we're right that we want to make sure it gets done. And sometimes when we're in that situation, we are not as kind as maybe we could be. And I know this is true because during the pandemic, my fuse is like this short. And my fuse has always been miles and miles and miles and miles wide. You don't want to be there when it goes off because it takes a long time to go off. But it does go off every once in a while. And I thought, you know, I am short with people in a way that I was never short with people before COVID. And I have insisted on things that I think are right in ways that I would have never insisted on things before the pandemic. And we weren't isolated for almost 2 years. The Corinthians church was a really gifted church. They were laden with spiritual gifts. They had spiritual gifts coming out of their ears, but they didn't know how to get along with one another. So I'm going to read 3 verses of 1 Corinthians 13, that great hymn to love that Paul writes. But I'm going to read it from Eugene Peterson's The Message, because you may not have heard it this way before. If I speak with human eloquence and angelic ecstasy but don't love, I'm nothing but the creaking of a rusty gate. If I speak God's word with power, revealing all God's mysteries and making everything plain as day, and if I have the faith to say to a mountain, jump, and it jumps, but I don't love, I'm nothing. If I give everything I own to the poor and even go to the stake to be burned as a martyr, but I don't love, I've gotten nowhere. No matter what I say, what I believe, and what I do, I am bankrupt without love. And that is why the Spirit, in its most annoying way, which it always is, said, watch the Jewel video. How many of you wouldn't want to be part of an organization like that just goes out and helps people? We can work on all of our spiritual gifts, and if we have time together, we will. And you're going to get really turned on because you'll find out, wow, that's why I like this, and it's easy. It's easy for me to do this because God has gifted me there, and I shouldn't even try to do this because God hasn't gifted me there. But right now, we need to get back to fundamentals. If you're a football team, you need to learn how to tackle again. We need to just be kind to one another, to love one another, and realize when somebody does something that we don't really like, it's not because they're bad. It's not because they're dumb. It's not because of anything. It's just they're doing the best they can. We are doing the best we can today in the midst of this junk that's just come back again. And I tell you what, I had allowed myself to think we are moving beyond it. And then we're suddenly not. And when I get that way, I am not always as kind. And I have to be kind to you because you pay me. And when I'm out at a store, I have to be kind because I don't want to be one of those schmucks who isn't. So who gets the brunt of it when I go home? The people I love the most. It's suddenly safe to go, ah! And that feels terrible to me. My wife loves it when I do that. All right, she doesn't. She gives it back to me as good as she gets it. True, her words have never been spoken in this church. We are a people that are gifted. Honestly, I want you to find your spiritual gifts. I want you to use your spiritual gifts. We are a church that can go so far, but we will go nowhere, and it will make no difference until we do it out of love, until we do it out of kindness. Till we do it out of kindness. When people see we are the kind of church that is like You Kindness, and this is not a plug for You Kindness. If you know, my son gave me a shirt for Christmas that said, "I'm silently correcting your grammar." Which I do. I don't do it out loud. I'm not one of those people. So You Kindness is like, well, what kind of grammar is that? But I want to be part of a church. People want to be part of a church. When they come in, they know they are going to be loved. They are going to be enveloped in kindness. Even when they say stupid things and believe crazy ideas. We're going to love them, aren't we? If we want to grow, we have to love, or else everything we do means nothing. We will be that people. God calls us to be that church. And when you're truly kind and you're given flowers and you're given whatever to people, when you're pulling them out of a ditch, when you're helping somebody across the street because they're lost and they're confused, you feel really good. And there's a reason for that. Because it is good. Only kindness matters. Jacob, the second half of the video. My religion is kindness. He means it. It's wonderful when you see Bishop Tutu and the Dalai Lama and spiritual greats like that. They're not serious when they get together. They laugh. They just laugh because God has filled them with joy and kindness. You Kindness says, you kindness needs you. But I say Christ needs you to be truly the church.